Akim Shalom. Before I begin this lesson, I want to start off by giving all glory, honor, and praises unto Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rachakodash, and double honor to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone who taught us His truth. A sincere Shalom to the hopeful like this out there listening, learning, and or teaching in truth and sincerity. Shalom. So today, Akim, I want to go into these false statistics that are put out there by Esau Edom, the so-called white man, who is a false accuser and a slanderer. Okay, and as we know, pursuant of the scriptures, they have a perpetual hatred against the children of Israel, the true biblical Hebrew Israelites, which are the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native American Indians. And out of this white man's mouth, so-called, you hear all type of slanders. You know, they say about so-called black people that our people commit most of the crimes, and you know, they say about so-called Latinos that you're all a bunch of drug dealers and you can't run a country, so on and so forth. Okay, and what they do is they're masters at deceiving. Okay, brother said during the camp, you know, Esau Edom is the ultimate car salesman. Okay, because they paint things in broad terms and they talk in such a way that people do not question what they say. But when you dig deeper, you understand these things are not true. Okay, we understand the so-called Latinos do not run Mexico, because you look at the president. Who is it? It's a small hat, a so-called JEW, an imposter. Okay, from over there, which the people over there in our land, those are not the real JEWs. They're imposters. Okay, they're simply Edomites posing as our people. Okay. Just like the Edomites today, they have the picture of so-called Jesus Christ and the disciples. And who's on there? Oh, that's right. They painted their own pictures on there because they are deceivers. Right? This goes all the way back to the Renaissance period. Okay, so these devils have a long track record of fraud. Okay, and since they have such a high track record of fraud, okay, how can you trust any of their false statistics or the way they represent those statistics? Okay, so, you know, I had this conversation with ChatGPT earlier, and I wanted to, just shed some light on some of these false statistics. Okay, so I typed in, there is a statistic that blacks commit most crimes while being a smaller portion of the population. Can you find it? It said the statistics people are usually referring to is black Americans are about 13 to 14% of the population, right? A small group, but account for a larger share of arrests for certain crimes, especially violent crimes. So right there, keyword, arrests. Okay? People get arrested all the time for things they didn't do. Okay? If somebody calls and you fit the description, you're going to get arrested. Okay? If you deal with an officer who's an asshole and you stand up for your rights, you're going to get arrested, right? So on and so forth. Okay, so arrest does not equal a crime. Okay, so we're going to go get the next one. It says a commonly repeated version is 13% of the population commits 50% of the murders. Okay, now look what ChatGPT says. That statement is not literally correct as written. The FBI data is about arrests, not proven crimes committed. Okay, and I know people, okay, who they threw the book at them, man. You know, especially with these domestic, with these women. Okay, these women, they lie, and you get in trouble for domestic violence. Okay, I have family members. Okay, people I knew for a long time, okay, that were falsely accused, man. Okay, and when you're around a woman and they have that spirit on them of slander, you could feel the hairs on your neck standing up. Okay, because she could just call any one of her simps and they'll come, quote unquote, handle you or try. Okay, and if you defend yourself, they could call the police and now you got two witnesses against you. Okay, that's another example of how that can happen, man. Okay, But nevertheless, let's get back to the point. It says the FBI data is about arrests, not proven crimes committed. For some years, Black Americans accounted for roughly 50% of murder arrests. Again, arrests. So, why would they put these statistics out there and not show the whole story? Because that's how a car salesman does it. You ask a car salesman a question, is this car good? If it's not good, they're going to say, well, it runs pretty good. He didn't say it was good. He said it ran good. Does it break down? Well, shit, it was running good until it broke down. You see? They use the way they phrase things, they're technically correct, but they're not practically correct. They're not actually correct. You see? Black Americans accounted for roughly 50% of murder arrests, while making up about 13% of the population. For all arrests combined, the numbers are much lower than 50%. Recent FBI-based analysis show Black Americans account for roughly 27 to 30% of arrests, while representing 13 to 14% of the population. So basically, when it's all said and done, they're saying that basically, because if you take 13 to 14 times 2, that's around 27 to 30, roughly. So it could be said, okay, black people get arrested twice as much. Okay. But again, that's just arrest. That's not the whole story. Did they get convicted? Did they get exonerated? What is exoneration? Okay, we'll get into that in a minute. It says a few points. Arrests are not the same as convictions or crimes committed. Different crime categories have very different racial distributions. Researchers debate how much of this disparity is explained by factors such as poverty, neighborhood conditions, policing patterns, right? Some black neighborhoods are overly policed. Okay, and I know this to be a fact because I've lived in both so-called black areas and so-called white areas. And you barely ever see police driving around in so-called white areas. But you go to a so-called black area, you have 3 or 4 cars patrolling the same area over and over and over again, man. Okay? It says family structure, education, and other social variables. So if you're looking for a specific statistic that often gets quoted online, it's usually some variation of Black Americans about 13% of the population, but account for about half of murder arrests. That is different from saying commit half of all crime, which is not. Here, let's read this again. This is different from saying they commit half of all crime, which is not what FBI arrest data showed. Right? It just stops at arrest. So they gathered the part of the story that they wanted, and they stopped right there. Okay, we arrested them. Okay, and so that's the statistic, that they were arrested. And people misquote that and say, well, they committed the crime. You being arrested does not mean you're committing the crime. Okay, we know this nation was founded on slavery and false accusations, and so-called black men were lynched for staring at white women. Okay, these are the same people who had children, and now their children are patrolling the streets. These same racist colonizers who came here and stole the land from the Native Americans, broke all the treaties, right? That's a deceiver right there. The ultimate car salesman. Broke all the treaties, then bought so-called black slaves, right? Which if you're so-called African American, you're of the tribe of Judah, right? A true Israelite from the Bible. Okay, they bought them from those Hamites over there in Africa. Okay? And used them to build up America into the most powerful nation that ever existed. Through what? Through free labor. Okay? Through free labor, through stealing of the land, through oppression. Okay, so how can you trust these people's statistics? Why would you be surprised that they would misrepresent a statistic? Let's continue on. I asked, how much of these arrests end in conviction? Right? So we're asking it, okay, well, what's the next step? What happened after, like it says here, 50% more murder arrests right here. Not murders, murder arrests. So they suspected somebody of committing murder. There is no single national statistic that tells us X% of arrests of black Americans ends in conviction. Well, how fucking convenient. So we cannot go to the very next step to debunk this theory easily. It can be debunked, but it's not an easy task because everything is hidden. The statistics are hidden. They're misrepresented. Okay? It says the main reason is that the U.S. arrest data and court conviction data are collected by different agencies and are not consistently linked nationwide. And that's bullshit. They can do it very easily, man, but they're not going to because it would disprove Esau's pseudoscience that, so-called black people, so-called, the Israelites really, that we commit all the crime and that we're dangerous and this and that. Okay, because they got to keep that theory going. They got to keep that pseudoscience going, all right, so they can continue to arrest our people and put us back into slavery. Okay, that's why do you think the prison industrial complex, let's get this. AI overview. The prison industrial complex is a term used to describe the overlapping profit-driven interests of government and private industry that use surveillance, policing, and mass imprisonment as solutions to economic, social, and political problems. It connects corporations, politicians, and correctional institutions in a cycle that relies on continuously high incarceration rates. So in other words, this whole system makes money off of putting people in prison whether they're guilty or not. Okay, they have to keep them prison houses filled to keep this profit system going. Okay, this is not a system of justice. This is a system of profit. Okay, the same system of profit that existed during the time of chattel slavery. And the same group of people that are being exploited just like during the time of chattel slavery. Okay, that's why most of the prisons are filled with Israelites, man. Just a quick one. Black Americans make up approximately 37 to 38% of the total incarcerated population of the United States, despite representing about 13 to 14% of the general U.S. population, right? So they're putting more of our people in jail than other people, man. Okay? And so, what does that show you, man? Okay, something is up, man. Something is not right here, so you got to really look into it. Okay, this is a for-profit system. Don't they do slave labor in prisons? Okay. And besides that, you've got the fact that Esau has a perpetual hatred against our people. Okay, let's get that precept. Who are the Israelites, man? Isaiah 40, 42 and 22. But this is a people robbed and spoiled, right? The Israelites, you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native American Indians. We were robbed and spoiled. We were robbed of this land. We were spoiled. Okay, we were forced to do free labor. And now we got to deal with racism and trying to work all these jobs to survive in an area where the police are more likely to single you out and arrest you. As we've proven just now, our people are more heavily policed because they are arrested more, not necessarily convicted. Okay, but this is a people robbed and spoiled. They are all of them snared or trapped in holes, and they are hid in prison houses. They are hid in prison houses. They are hid in prison houses, you see? They are for a prey, and none delivereth, for a spoil, and none saith, restore. You see? Yeah, man. Okay, and all them lynchings, hey, like the scripture says, cursed is he that hangs on a tree. Right? They hung Yahushua on a tree, a so-called black man. Okay? And they hung our people on trees. Okay? Because we are a cursed people. That's the curses of Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter. It says that we will be slaves serving captivity to our enemies. All right? An elementary chapter in this truth, in this doctrine. Okay? The so-called white man is not cursed. Okay, not yet. Now some of the curses are trickling over to him now, because as we read in Deuteronomy 30:7, what does it say? Briefly, it says, and Yahweh thy power will put all these curses, right, the curses that are upon us, upon thine enemies, and on them that hate thee, which persecuted thee, right? They persecute us. Okay? Over policing our neighborhoods, right? Now, back to ChatGPT. Okay? How much of these arrests end in conviction? Okay, what we do know, many arrests do not result in conviction. So how are they going to put this statistic out there, and a lot of those arrests don't end up being true? It was a false. It was for lack of a better word, it was a vain arrest. They arrested you and you weren't the guy. Okay? Cases may be dismissed. Prosecutors may decline to file charges. Defendants may be acquitted, or charges may be reduced. For serious violent crimes like homicide, conviction rates after arrest are generally much higher than for minor offenses. For all crimes combined, the percentage of arrests that eventually lead to a conviction varies substantially by jurisdiction and offense types, so a single nationwide number will be misleading. Okay, so there's no way for us to know. All right, now we know that Jake is into some folly. We're not gonna act like no Jake has ever committed a crime, but they are misrepresented. We are misrepresented. Okay, and on top of that, we do know that a lot of the Jakes that are committing crimes are being influenced by Esau to do it through this violent rap music that they push on our people. Because again, who owns the rappers? The so-called JEWs, those Edomites, so-called white men with witch hats and pointy noses who live over there in Israel, who say that that is their land. Okay, those are the people who own these rappers, man. Going all the way up to the international banking families, and then below them, their minions. These so-called black rappers did not make money by working hard. They made that money through child sacrificing with the elites, the Epstein class. Okay, they went up there, and the elites, the people over them, saw their talent and signed a record deal with them. Okay, look at P. Diddy. Okay, the same guy that made Biggie big. It was found, all that baby oil in children. Well, I don't know how much children were found or whatever, but I know that they were throwing a lot of sex parties. Hey, P. Diddy is a saint compared to what some of these Edomites of the Epstein class are doing. Okay, so who's P. Diddy's handler? Who's over him? It's probably some Edomite. Okay, now I'm just speaking of hypotheticals now, but those of you who know, who study, you know exactly what I'm talking about, man. You know that these rappers don't just fall out of the fucking sky, man. They're chosen, just like your presidents are chosen and elected. Okay, and they want these rappers, of course, Jake rappers, to sing to our people about gang violence and murder and crashing out and fighting and selling drugs, because that way they could send their police to those communities. And since that's all Jake knows, okay, a lot of Jakes will be arrested. Okay, but it's a farm, it's a prison industrial complex. They all work together, these different corporations. When you see, it's all connected, man. That's how Esau is, man. These people are deep thinkers. They're not stupid. They hate our people with a passion. Psalm 64th chapter The inward thought of every one of them in the heart is deep. Okay, this is all pre-planned. I mean, these are the same people that killed 3,000 of their own citizens on 9/11. Right? And if you don't know that 9/11 was orchestrated by the government, then you're a fool. And you have a lot of studying and critical thinking to do. You know? And, the scriptures, the spirit of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai has revealed all these things to us, man. But so ultimately, if you can't get some of this stuff, maybe the Lord just ain't dealing with you. Okay? But we pray that Jake wakes up and comes into this truth, remembering the heritage, remembering the true power, Yahweh and Yahweh Shai, man. Coming back to their heritage, man. Not believing in vanity and lies and the ways of this world, man. Look at what the ways of this world got our people doing. They got our people committing crimes. They got our people believing in these false statistics as well. Okay, and so Jake is a victim to psychological warfare as well as over policing, man. Okay, but without going on and on, I want to continue on here. Now we're gonna go to the next question. I asked it, what percentage of blacks are exonerated versus whites? Now let's get this word exonerated. What is the meaning of exonerated? To be exonerated means to be officially declared Salakia. To be exonerated means to be officially cleared of blame or declared not guilty of a crime or wrongdoing. Okay, now let's go back. What percentage of blacks are exonerated versus whites? If you're asking about exonerations, people convicted and later officially cleared, black Americans are disproportionately represented among exonerees. What is disproportionate? To an extent that is too large or too small in comparison with something else. Right, so let's get into it. It says, according to the National Registry of Exonerations, black Americans are about 13 to 14% of the population, right? A small group, but accounted for about 53% of recorded exonerations as of 2022. So just off the strength of this statistic alone, you clearly see that something is wrong, okay? A small group of people, but they are 53% of exonerated people, falsely accused. Okay, so you get a group of 100 people. Let's just say we grab 100 people that were falsely accused. 53% of them would be black, so-called, and then 47 so-called would be white. Okay. Even though blacks are only 13%. So what does that mean? That means there's a long fucking group. There's a long fucking line of our people that are being falsely accused. There's a large group of them, man. Y'all know what it is. But I thought this was very interesting because how come this statistic doesn't go out? How come this statistic doesn't get around? Because it proves that the so-called white man is a false accuser. He's a devil. He's a liar. He's a deceiver. You see? Targeting our people more heavily. It says white Americans accounted for a substantially smaller share despite being a much larger share of the population. Look at this. A 2022 registry report concluded that innocent black people are 7 times more likely than innocent white people to be wrongfully convicted of serious crimes based on exoneration data. For drug crime exoneration, about 69% of exonerees were black and about 16% were white. In 2023, about 61% of exonerees were black. See? So they accusing our people of selling drugs, and they found out, oh, he wasn't selling shit. He wasn't He wasn't wrong, or he wasn't guilty. Okay? Exonerations are not the same thing as all wrongful convictions. Many innocent people are never exonerated, right? A lot of our people are innocent sitting behind bars. How many stories have you seen of a man that was sitting behind bars and they found out he wasn't guilty after 40 years and they give him like $1 million? And the first thing he does is go to Burger King for a cheeseburger. A lot of time I see them stories, it's always a so-called black man who was wrongfully convicted, man. You see? And then last question, are black neighborhoods over police versus white neighborhoods? Okay. Research generally finds that many predominantly black neighborhoods experience more police presence and enforcement activity than predominantly white neighborhoods. Hey, that's your exonerations, man. Because they're trying to fill a quota. All right, in this black neighborhood, you've got to arrest at least 100 people by the end of the month or whatever. Just a fucking example. Where in the white neighborhood, well, here you only got to arrest 50 because they're gonna commit less crime, right? It's like any job, bro. You go to a job, the manager gives you an order, you don't question it, you just do what is told of you. You don't run the company. Okay, all these police departments, they're ran a specific way, right? And it shows by the way that they target our people. So these orders are coming from the top, whatever the orders may be. All right. Studies have found that police patrols, right? Patrols, because I've seen that with my own two eyes. I'll be in the same spot, and there'll be like 5 police cars pass by in an hour or two. It says traffic stops, pedestrian stops, and low-level enforcement tend to be more concentrated in black neighborhoods than in white neighborhoods with similar reported crime levels. The U.S. Department of Justice has in several city investigations found patterns of disproportionately aggressive policing in black communities. Researchers have also found that residents of high crime neighborhoods, many of which are disproportionately black due to historical and socioeconomic factors, often both experience more crime and more police activity. Right, but what did they define as crime? Arrests? Because we just saw that the arrests are different than a conviction. Okay, and now we're going to go into the wealth gap. What is the white wealth gap what is the wealth gap between whites and blacks? It says the racial wealth gap in the U.S. is large, though exact numbers vary depending on measure, blah, blah, blah. Here we go. This is what I want. Okay, the median white household has roughly 5 to 6 times the wealth of the median black household. Okay, so right there, if you're a so-called white man, you got 5 to 6 times more money than so-called black man. Okay, why are you committing crimes? You have no reason to commit crimes. You have everything you need. Okay? Most people that commit crimes is because they don't have enough money. They're trying to make ends meet. And they have to turn to crime. Right? Or they don't see a future. So on and so forth. Okay? Which brings me to this scripture. This is Isaiah 26:10. Let favor be shown to the wicked. Who's the wicked? Pursuant to Malachi 1:4, the nation of Edom. Let favor be shown to the wicked, yet will he not learn righteousness. That's right. You give them wealth, you give them power. What do they do with it? They abuse it. Instead of being content, okay, look at the Epstein class. The richest, most powerful people in this world are so-called white men who are raping children and drinking their blood and influencing society in such a way to, and they're doing all type of wicked things, man. All right, they are using their capitalism, okay, to oppress millions of people, especially Jake. Even so-called white people are tired of these CEOs and high-level elites. Rothschilds, Rockefellers. Those are the ones all the way at the top. right? But they're tired of all you rich people, even your low-level CEOs, so on and so forth. Okay, because you're a great oppressor, man. You people should be content, but here you are building data centers all over the world so you can put a chip inside of everybody's hand and in their brain so you can have control over the people financially, so that if they don't follow your rules, you kick them out of society and they die. That's Revelation 13:15. Okay, so it says, let favor be showed to the wicked, yet will he not learn righteousness. In the land of uprightness he will deal unjustly and will not behold the majesty of Yahweh. That's right, man. These devils, they don't even believe in a God. A majority of them are atheists. A lot of them believe in these false idols like Baal, all type of different madness. This is John 8:44, year of your father the devil, and the lust of your father you will do. So Yahushua was, at this time, ripping into some of the wicked scribes and Pharisees because they were acting like Edomites. That's why he said, you are of your father the devil, right? Devil, that word goes into slanderer, okay? That the adversary, okay? And the lust of your father ye will do. He was a murderer from the beginning, right? Esau, Edom, okay? Going all the way back to Cain, because if you can receive it, Esau, Edom is the reincarnation of Cain. Cain died and came back as Esau. And what did Cain do? He killed his brother Abel because Abel was superior. Abel gave a superior blessing to the Lord. Abel did what he was supposed to, and Esau killed him because the Lord showed favor to him instead of Cain, right? It's the same thing now. The so-called white man sees our people as superior, and for that reason alone, they want to kill us. They want to destroy us. Okay, it's like that movie Get Out. Okay, y'all could, spoiler alert. Those of you should watch, you brothers that haven't seen it, I recommend it. It's a great movie. And it really shows the wickedness of Esau and the way they think. This is exactly how they think. If you want to know how racist Edomites think, this movie is a great example, man. Because like I said, I lived around Edomites. I lived around Jake. I know exactly how they think, and that's how they think, man. They know that our people are superior, but they think that we're like monkeys. They think like our brain doesn't work on the same level as theirs. So in their mind, they're missing the cool, they think we're cooler, we're more in fashion, we're stronger, okay? We're able to work harder, we're able to do all these things, run faster, jump higher, but they say that we have low IQs, which they know is false. In their heart of hearts, they know that we're also better intellectuals than they are as well. Okay, the Lord created a master race, all right? The Israelites, you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native American Indians, we are the superior people. Don't get it twisted, man. There's no other nation can compare with us in any of these factors. Okay, spiritually, physically, and mentally. But nevertheless, back to the point, it says he was a murderer from the beginning and abode not in the truth, right? Because Cain knew the truth at one point, but he didn't abide in it. Because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he's a liar and the father of it. Right, man, these devils, they're the wicked, man. They projecting their ways on us, and that's why they want to over-police us, man. They see us as a threat, and how do they handle that is by using their fraudulent system to keep our people down. Psalms 83 tells you that the Edomites are joined with all these other nations in keeping Jake down. Because it's not just the so-called white man that knows we're superior. The other heathens know it as well. These East Indians know it. These Chinese so-called, Japanese so-called, Ishmaelites, these so-called Arabs, Hamites, all these nations know, man. Okay? This is Psalms 10:2. The wicked in his pride doth persecute the poor. Let them be taken to the devices they have imagined. That's right. They set up all these traps for our people. Okay, and now you got so-called white kids getting gunned down on the street. Okay, because the time of judgment has come for these Edomites, man. The Lord is judging them on a lower level. Okay, that's why those curses are starting to fall on them. That's why you got so-called white people living in the back of their cars, because they work in 2 jobs but they can't make rent. So see, the very system that they used to lord over us is now crushing them. Right? That's called justice. That's them being taken in their own devices. Okay? I want to grab Ecclesiastes 8, verse 11. Because sentence against an evil work is not executed speedily, therefore the heart of the sons of men is fully set in them to do evil. Right? Because these Edomites, they're in their kingdom right now. They're in their power. They've been here all this time, taking advantage of us, and nothing bad has happened to them. Now I know I mentioned earlier they're starting to get some of those curses on a low level. But on the grand scheme of things, the so-called white man is still doing very well. Okay, and so he thinks the Lord is with him ultimately. Okay, but he's not. Okay, watch this. Verse 12. Though a sinner do evil 100 times and his days be prolonged, right? Their kingdom is still going. They're still in power, right? Yet surely I know that it shall be well with them that fear the Most High, which fear before him, right? Those of us in this truth, this gospel, the hopeful elect, okay, we believe in, we serve in the Lord to the best of our ability, continuing to suffer in this kingdom. But in the end, we're going to win this thing, man. Okay, it says, but it shall not be well with the wicked, right? Malachi 1:4, the Edomites. Neither shall he prolong his days, which are as a shadow, because he feareth not before the Most High. That's right. They don't fear the Most High. Okay, that's why they say things like, we could piss God off as much as we want. That's why Elon Musk is saying these are Jesus-level miracles, blaspheming the Lord. The Lord didn't have to put a chip in anybody's brain to fix spinal cord injuries. Look, Elon Musk used the phrase Jesus-level miracles of science to describe the future of capabilities of brain-computer interfaces like Neuralink. Okay, this is the guy that made that brain chip that's trying to push it on everybody. Don't take it, Yasharallah. That's the mark of the B-E-A-S-T. And if you take it, the Lord will destroy you, as he will destroy also these Edomites. All right, but if you're joined with them, you got to die together. So separate yourself from these devils and from the ways of this world, Akim, and come back to this truth. Come back to your heritage, man. All right, we almost there. We almost at the end of this thing, man. This is Revelation 12:9, and that great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, right? The old serpent, the serpent in the garden, had the spirit of Esau on him, man. The serpent died, came back as Cain. Cain died, came back as Esau. That old serpent, that's the one that went through who? Through Eve, through the woman, to bring sin and evil into the world. The same way they do now. That's how did they destroy the black community? They removed the father out of the house through the welfare system, through feminism. Okay? Turning the so-called black woman into a masculine, combative, government-relying demon. Okay? Sucking off the nipples of the government, getting all this help so they don't need a man. Of course you're not going to have a father in the house when they systemically destroy the family unit. Again, who did that? Esau, Edom. This is war. What he's doing is war. And he has the audacity to bring out false statistics to blame our people, man. And this affects all the tribes, man. Myself being of the Northern Kingdom, I knew many Jakes that grew up without their fathers, man. Okay, many Northern Kingdomers and Southern Kingdomers, man. A lot of us didn't grow up with our father fully in our life, man. And it affects you. Okay, it is more work you have to do. These Edomites, these so-called white people, they have every advantage under heaven. They have a silver spoon, and they are still fucking up out here, man. Who's the superior people, man? They're in their own kingdom, and they're living in cars. They're committing crimes. They're grapists. They're doing all these things that they accuse us of doing. But they have 10 times the wealth. They have privilege. They have all these things, and they're still fucking up. You see? So these people are not the supremacists, man. The so-called Aryan race is nothing more than a lie, man. Okay? That old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world, right? He deceived the whole world. One way he does it is through his false statistics, through his pseudoscience. Oh, the earth is 14 billion years old. How the fuck do you know? Were you there? You know? I thought you guys only believed in what you could see. You weren't there. So it takes faith to believe in their science. You see, it's all idol worship at the end of the day, because you can't prove that what science says is correct, what their version of science says is correct. It says he was cast out into the earth and his angels were cast out with him, right? This is representative of when Yahushua returns, you're going to have the Space Force, right? These different fighter pilots and secret weapons coming out to fight against the quote-unquote alien threat. What's the quote-unquote alien threat that they've been preparing for? The returning of our Lord and Savior Yahushua, a so-called black man. Okay, he's coming back to save his people from what? From who? From our enemies and all who hate us and persecute us, pursuant to Luke, the 1st chapter, the 71st verse. Okay, that's what the Lord is coming back to do, and they're getting ready to fight against him. But guess what? Okay, he's going to get cast out of the earth, and his angels cast out with him. Meaning those fighter jets and all those weapons he sends against the Lord is going to turn to ashes. It's going to be shot right out of the sky, man, by the so-called UFOs, which are the chariots of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. Right, now let's read verse 10. And I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now is come salvation and strength in the kingdom of our power, and the power of his Hamashiach. For the accuser, right, that false accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accused them before our power day and night. You see, because these international banking families, they basically accuse us to the Heavenly Father. Okay? Just like these low-level Edomites falsely accuse us with these false statistics. But the Lord sees right through it, man. The Lord controls all things. And the Lord knows, when you put Esau's crimes against our crimes, real crimes, by the way, not crime on paper, like, oh, you were jaywalking. That's not a crime. Okay, a real crime. These Edomites are the biggest murderers of all. This nation was built on murder. But nobody who did those murders was ever tried, was never judged. Okay, they got away with it. They say, let bygones be bygones. Right? How many so-called, let's look it up. How many, we're going to start with the indigenous, right? How many indigenous were killed by white settlers when Christopher Columbus came? Just type in kind of sloppy, but it doesn't matter as long as we can get the answer to this question. Historians estimate that up to 55 million indigenous people perished across the Americas within the century following Christopher Columbus' 1492 landing. You see? Okay, that's 55 million murders, man. No, you take all the murders in the so-called black community, it doesn't even create a small fraction of this. And I read to y'all in one of my lessons, I read a history book about the destruction of the Indies, man. And the way these people were slaughtered is sickening. Okay, they didn't even commit any crimes. They were helping the white people live here. And the so-called white man turned around and started slaughtering our people because they wanted to take over our land and our resources, just like they do in these other countries. What is Donald Trump saying? I want to take Cuba. I want to take Colombia. Or did he say Colombia? Maybe he didn't say Colombia. He said Cuba and something else. Look what he did with Maduro, man. He went to Venezuela and kidnapped their president so he could steal oil. So am I wrong or am I right, man? We're literally showing you the spirit of these people. Now, how many so-called African Americans were killed during slavery? Okay? Historians estimate that millions of African Americans and enslaved ancestors died as a result of the transatlantic slave trade and American slavery because of the scale, incomplete records, and different stages of the tragedy. Exact numbers are debated, but scholars characterize the deaths into three main stages: the capture and march, the Middle Passage, the enslavement. Right? The enslavement was so bad. You had some of our people dying in the plantations, being tortured, being killed because they couldn't work anymore, so on and so forth. Some people say 60 million, and I've heard that before. And I've read other books where the indigenous, it was over 100 million, but it's hard to calculate. But either way, when you combine all of these false statistics and slanders and the poisoning of the food, the water, the air, capitalism, creating false scarcity, okay, and all the enslavement and stealing of the land, the so-called white man is the biggest murderer of them all, the Edomites. Okay, they take all of our crimes, it doesn't even compare to a drop in a bucket to what Esau Edom has done, man. That's why the scripture says the sins stacked to heaven, man. That's why the Lord has to destroy America with thermonuclear destruction, because it's so wicked that the only solution is fire. Okay, and the Lord, Yahweh Bashim Yahushai, is going to do that very soon, Akim. So, keep praying, keep believing, all right? Staying in the faith, okay? Continuing to do what you're supposed to be doing. Continue to grow in this thing, because we're reaching a point in prophecy right now where these devils are getting ready to mandate an RFID chip for buying and selling, a brain-computer interface for buying and selling, and if you don't take it, they're going to cause you to be killed. So we got to trust in Yahweh Bashim Yahushai that the Lord is going to provide for us, that the Lord is going to take care of us. And whether we have to go out as martyrs, or whether we get spiritual powers to defend ourselves, or whether the Lord hides us during the times of these calamities, at the end of the day, we're going to get the victory over the beast. We're going to get the victory over Esau, and we're going to get that crown of life and rule in the world to come. And we know what that means for this devil. It means he's going head first into hardcore slavery for 1,000 long drawn out years, which is justice. It's justice, okay? And, we're going to be living in the kingdom forever and ever, man. After his 1,000 years, they're going to be eradicated, okay? Because, how can you leave a virus like this on the earth? The earth is going to be perfect. And, that's why Obadiah chapter 1 says these devils have to be done away with, man. Because look at this plot right here, man. What type of devil creates all the problems in the world and then uses Jake as a scapegoat? Right? He's using, he's committing all these crimes against humanity. You got the Epstein files came out, and people are still talking about black people in the ghettos committing crimes. Are you fucking stupid, man? Okay? For those of you that are saying that shit. Scapegoat. A scapegoat is a person or group unfairly blamed for the mistakes, misdeeds, or failures of others. People, groups, or institutions use scapegoating to deflect responsibility, avoid accountability, or manage collective frustrations, right? To all the stuff they blame us for, man, they're the ones who are doing it on the highest of levels. And we are simply used as somebody to point the finger at. So people can keep paying their taxes, keep being divided, and keep making these Edomites rich and powerful, man, to keep his matrix going. But the Lord is exposing these devils on a high level. Okay? And it's almost that time for these devils to be judged. Okay, but with that, I want to finish by giving all glory, honor, and praises unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Bahashem Rachakodash. Double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone who taught us this truth. A sincere shalom to the hopeful elect that's out there listening, learning, and or teaching in truth and sincerity. Shalom wa. Abba, Abba, Shalom.